Hi guys. Hello, hello. Some nice ambient. Oh, hold on. This is let's turn this down just a little bit. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. All right. I'm just going to turn it down way down. Perfect. All right. Hi friends. Hello, hello. Welcome to our From Blood and Ash, a Kingdom of Flesh and Fire live. I'm just getting all cozy in my chair. I am so excited to be chatting with you guys tonight. Just to let you know, I'm gonna go through some quick ground rules, explain what's going on, and then we are gonna go ahead and get started. Hi everyone. Hello, hello, hello. So first and foremost, the way that these recap nights work is first we're gonna start off by recapping the story. We're just gonna do a very quick, like 5-minute breakdown. It's probably gonna be very chaotic. And then after that, we're going to go through specific chapters that we feel like are important to reference. So these are either like our favorite moments or things that we picked out on this reread that we felt were really important to kind of discuss or reference to you guys. At any point tonight, if you were like, hey, I have a question, or hey, I'd really like to discuss this one thing, we use something in here called Slido. It is a great little service that allows me to interact with you guys live, and you can use it on your phone. So you just go to slido.com, and the code tonight is Poppy. So it is Poppy, and I will also go ahead and pop pop in the link. So if you guys are on your computer for any reason, hold on. There you go. That is also the link, so you can either choose to use it that way or you can use it the other way. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So tonight we are just going through From Blood and Ash and A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. So we will have no spoilers past that point. Obviously, we're going to reference the very end of A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, which is a big deal, but we won't go past anything that happens in the Crown of Gilded Bones. Next week at this time, same time next week, we are going to be going over the Crown of Gilded Bones and A Shadow in the Ember, and then obviously having a little bit of a theory spiral right before our midnight live for the War of Two Queens. So I'm very excited. I can't wait. I have some amazing co-hosts popping on in here in a second. Let me just, my computer screen got all messed up, so let me just fix it. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let everyone in, but I just wanted to give y'all the 411. Admit all. There we go. Hi. Let me just make sure everyone can hear you. Hi, guys.
Hello. Oh, hello.
Hi. How are you guys doing?
Is that working?
Yeah, you sound great. You sound great. You look great. That's all that matters. You good, Avery? Avery looks like she's... Oh, okay, there we go.
I just couldn't hear.
Oh, no. Okay, good, but you got it fixed.
Yeah, we're good.
I also love that we all wore black. Like, it was like...
I think mine is actually green, but
Is it?
Yeah.
I love it. Is it wait, does it say murder? I love it. Very cute. Very cute. Okay, well, I have to explain who everyone is here because I'm sure some people are like, wait, some of these look like familiar faces, some of them don't. So first off, on my left right here, that is Avery, also known as Freckles in Fiction. Avery tends to be my spiral buddy. So anytime we do deep dives or really intense spirals, she tends to be my go-to. But as I'm sure you guys are much aware, I may be the Throne of Glass expert. Avery is for sure the ACOTAR expert, which means we had to bring in a From Blood and Ash expert, which is where Kate, Foliage of Fiction, came in. So Kate is a really good friend of Avery's, and so Avery was like, hey, we should bring Kate on. And I was like, yes, great. Something I don't need. If I don't know something, you know, someone will correct me. So that's what I need. So Kate is here just to kind of, she's the expert. So if you guys have like a really random question, either she'll help us find it or we all have our Kindles open. So we'll find it in the book somewhere. But yeah, so kind of just to explain, like I said, we're going to go through From Blood and Ash first, and then we will go through, A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, which I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't like both of these books like take place in like what, 2 weeks?
Oh yeah, something super, super fast.
Yeah.
I mean, the first book, it was like when she, so, okay, yeah, we're talking about the whole book. I'm like, so
Yeah,
after she, after she killed Victor, Victor was killed, and then she killed Lord Mazine, she was out, I think, for like 3 or 4 days, just like drugged up because but other than that, like everything else went super, super fast.
Right. Well, because it was like they weren't on the road for very long. And then at that point, they were in like the next thing I know, they're like in Spessizin after like a few days.
The whole thing takes place, like the whole, what we know through Gilded Bones takes place over what, like 3 months total?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's got to be like a month, like maybe a month and a half, 2 months for these two.
Yeah,
like I would maybe ballpark it at like a month a book.
Yeah.
Which is
but yeah, less than that even. Yeah.
That's wild. Okay, so a quick refresh of From Blood and Ash. All right, let's see how much we all remember. So the things I remember, the things that stand out to me is obviously at the very beginning, we are at the Red Pearl. And which, by the way, the beginning had such a good hook because it was like someone was dead and it was, you know, they were all talking about that they were dead. And Poppy is just sitting there while they're all playing a game. And she's very quickly... she gets up from the table because Victor arrives, and that freaks her out. And then she's interrupted by this woman who we later find out who the woman is, which was very.
Yes.
I feel like anytime any of us go back and read that, it's like a giddy moment because we know who
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the best because you're just like there's like this whole connection and everything, and it's so great.
Did you ever theorize that that's who that was?
No, I didn't. That shocked me. But now I know. Now I know. Anytime you get eye color or like skin color or hair description, write that down. It's coming back. But I did not catch it on the first. I was like, "What? No way!" And I flipped out.
I don't think I did either. I feel like I heard someone say it in passing and I was like, yeah, that's a cool theory. I'll stick with it. So it didn't surprise me, but I wish I came up with the theory.
I know, right?
Yeah. So a woman comes and tells Poppy to go up to this room, and we meet Hawk at that point, which it's so weird to call him Hawk, but that is his name.
Hawk Flynn.
Hawk Flynn, or as I liked to call him because I had pinned him down from that moment, Prince Pine Spice Man. So and I did.
Oh my God.
You never heard me say that?
I love that.
Yeah, I literally was like, okay, so we're talking to Prince Pine Spice Man. Like
No, okay, but the language she uses for him, like when he's speaking, like I remember
He's so
I can look
sexy.
back at my like reactions and it's just like, ooh, Hawk Flynn, ooh, Hawk Flynn, like the whole time.
I forgot his last name was Flynn. I was like, Hawk. What was the last name? Like I just couldn't remember. But so when this reread, I was like, Flynn. Who came up with that? Kieran. Right. That seems like something Kieran would come up with. So Prince Pine Spice Man and her have their first kiss. And Kieran interrupts, which is very typical of Kieran in any situation with Poppy and
But you
Castiel.
don't, and obviously at this point, you don't know that it's Kieran.
You do.
You know that.
Well, he says Kieran. It's Kieran.
Yeah. But you don't know who Kieran is in relation to all of it.
Right. And you don't know any of that until the end.
Yes, exactly. And then from there, he indicates that he wants her to stay, and then that's when she makes her escape and she leaves. She comes back to, she gets back to her room, and I believe she follows Victor to where they are now going to help someone die with dignity, is what it was. Yeah. So they're going to take the pain away, which was a big part of this book about, death with dignity. It's something that Poppy really stands for up until about the Crown of Gilded Bones. I'm like, what book? The Crown of Gilded Bones. The Crown of Gilded Bones. And then and that was a big deal for her, was that she did this. And then I felt like we all lost a good one there. Rylan then died shortly after, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Rylan
I was
died.
actually really sad when Rylan died, but then I was like, ooh, but this means Hawk gets to, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Rylan dies, and then Hawk comes in, and then he has that beautiful moment where she takes off the veil, and I think it's Duke Dorian. I just love to say Duke Dorian. And then Duke Dorian says,
"Don't call him that. We do not shame his name that way."
Well, anyways, now we know two evil Dorians. So he says that Hawk then basically makes the vows, but he's supposed to make them to the maiden, but makes it to Penelope. Which is like,
yes,
honestly.
Yes. And he also says both halves are as beautiful as the whole, which is like one of my favorite lines in like the whole book. I'm just like, oh, my heart.
Honestly, I feel like this entire live, my role is going to be simping over Hawk Flynn.
It's fine.
Nothing else.
It's fine. I have my Hawk candle burning behind me, and let me tell you, this room is smelling real Prince Pine spicy right about now.
I was burning Heartmates. My Hawk candle is up here. Well, it's.
Do you think they're Heartmates?
Right, Castiel.
Because it hasn't been confirmed, right?
It has not been confirmed, but they're leaning heavily towards it, and I definitely think they are.
Okay. I don't know.
I think they are definitely, I was gonna say the things that support that are from later books, so we can't really talk about it too much. But yeah.
Okay. So Hawk becomes the guard. I feel like I'm gonna skip someone dies. I remember a maiden, or it's not a maiden, but it's one of the ladies in waiting dies, and that kind of
wasn't it what's her face that she stole the cloak from?
No, Britta didn't die. It was a different girl. It was a maid who worked on in the like expensive homes of the,
Yes.
but that was before Ryland even died.
Okay,
that
thank
was
you.
when she first met Lord Mazine. That was like right after.
Okay. See, I knew I was gonna mess this up.
And if it's not clear, there's a reason Kate is here, and I'm just gonna be the hype man.
Exactly. Kate's got this.
Wasn't it Britta?
Yeah.
No.
And then also the city council meeting was before Hawk became her guard.
Really? I thought that was after.
Yes. No, that was before. That was after the Red Pearl, but before he became her guard. So she was like standing there and she was like looking for him. She was like, and she saw him and she saw him like tighten his jaw when like Mr. and Mrs. Phillips were talking, and she could like see this like brooding frustration.
Oh, you're right. I totally thought at that point it was her. He was her guard. No, he's not. He wasn't yet. And
right,
then
he's across the room. He's not guarding her.
You're right. Wow.
And then after that,
and
was
then
the
Ryland's
atrium with the ladies.
And then,
oh yeah.
And then
Ryland's funeral.
Ryland's funeral. Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah. Well, and that was the other thing. I remember that was such a big deal because she wasn't supposed to be there. And then that's when Hawk comes up and he's like, I got this. And it's like, yes, you do.
And Victor, right, because Victor didn't feel like he could leave her.
Yes.
And she felt bad because she was like, oh God, he should be able to leave me. And he doesn't feel, and then like, he was like, nothing will literally ever happen to her. I'll guard her with my life. And I was just like, oh, this man.
Yeah. Okay, so then that happens. Hawk becomes the guard, and and then it's very quickly. Then that's what the issue with the Rise. Like she goes out and attacks.
Well, before that, they're in the atrium with the ladies in wait, and that's where they hear about Miss Willa's diary, and the one lady in wait, Lauren, is talking about Prince Castile.
Yes,
and then at the end of that was when she gets Duke's punishment. For talking to them, and
yes.
a slew of things that are not really good reasons.
I don't like talking about that man.
Yeah,
so we'll just breeze right over that, and then Craven attack.
So basically, but what was important about that too was that she sat down, and they originally were like, "We're not going to talk about because the maiden's here," and then it was like, "No." But then they started gossiping in front of her, and she obviously listening to that gossip. And if I remember correctly too, like some of the things they were talking about, because they also talked about Hawk, didn't they? Or was it just like
So they didn't talk about Hawk. They were like fake fainting and like dropping things so he would like help them. But then Lauren was talking about like Prince Castile and stuff. She had heard about him like infiltrating a local manor and like killing the Lord and stuff. And then that's when Poppy actually went out of what she was supposed to do. She's not supposed to talk to them. And she was like, so a good old rebellion would like liven up your life for people to die. And like basically snapped at him. And that was the first time her power like kind of like she wasn't thinking about it. Her power like reached out to Lauren and she like caught her emotions and she was like.
And we see a lot of times in this book too that like it was like intentional sporadic like powered kind of pulses, whereas in A Kingdom Flesh and Fire I felt like she was trying to hone it in a little more, not like hone in her powers, but to understand how that kind of works. And
I think she got that encouragement from Hawk, was saying like, oh, like you could use this to your advantage versus like she was so used to being like sheltered in and like not using it, and now it's like maybe like actually try to use this to help yourself.
Yes Okay. And then they go to the Rise, and that's when she is out there and he finds her, and then it's like the super cute moment that we all love about like him saying the thing about like your feet wear better shoes.
She needs appropriate footwear.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And then like your legs will be the death of me or something like that. Doesn't he say yes?
Yeah.
And that is when Avery went, ooh, Hawk Flynn.
Yeah.
There's also the one where like he threw the blade at his head and he caught it.
Yes.
And then later he was like, oh, I don't know any women that like fight like this with half as good of breasts. And you're like, whoa, buddy, I don't know you that well.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other interesting thing too was because I was rereading that scene a little bit today, like skimming it, and he mentions a few times, it's the only time in the history of the entire series that he goes, oh yeah, don't stab me. Like, don't stab me. And I was like,
the only time. And then he's like, ooh, stab me.
Yeah. Like, cause he takes it from her and he's like, I'm trying not to get stabbed. And I'm like, oh, that's a rare thing for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So then after that happens, there is, she has some interesting conversations with Mr. Castile, Hawk. And then she gets the diary. Is the diary's after that, right?
Yeah.
So before the diary is the Duke and Duchess address the people about the rise, which is where we see the dissenter throw the hand.
Yes.
And then that's where she like gets different emotions. She was like, she felt like, what was it? Like anguish and like terror and stuff. Like she was not feeling like pain. It was other stuff. And then she has the library with the priestess.
Okay, so the library
very important.
Yeah, so we're gonna come back to the library because the library is a really important one. And then she goes to get the diary, and then she goes.
And then she's on the ledge.
And then she's on the ledge, which we all laugh at because it's just so funny. So then she's on the ledge and she gets the diary, and then after that, it's preparation for the rite. So then she's preparing for the rite. She goes to the rite. We're gonna go through we'll talk a little bit about the rite. After, when we kind of break it down a little bit, but she goes to the rite. She thinks Castile is going to, or I should say Hawk. She thinks Hawk is going to be there, but Victor is actually the one that goes to pick her up. I do remember that. And she was a little disappointed, but Hawk later makes an appearance. And then he takes her to the willow tree and they have their little kissy.
Yeah, he do.
Yeah, under the willow. Yep.
Under the willow. They have their little kissy time. And then he says some very like racy things to her too. Here he's like, yeah, he's like, I would take you right here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Hawk. Like,
you can tell he's trying to like rein it in, but I also love that it's her, like he's trying to hold back and she's like, kiss me. And then it's like, there's no stopping it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, whatever one, you gotta give it to her.
I don't know how he was hiding the fangs during all this. Cause like, I feel like he would just
the whole time
giddy.
She's like, she noticed like, one, under the willow is dark, but like, she definitely, anytime she like kissed him, she was like, oh, his strangely sharp teeth. I'm like, girl, come on.
Yeah, like piece this together.
Like she's really smart. Like she's really, really smart, but sometimes she's a little stupid.
I know, but let's be honest. Would any of you be thinking about that when you're kissing him? Probably not. I would be thinking about that.
Oh, when I'm kissing him. Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be like, take me away. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Right. No, you're fine. So then, just dying over there. So
I have COVID, by the way. That's what's happening here.
Yeah, we didn't bring up the fact that Avery has COVID, but she's fine. Don't worry.
I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah, we made her do this anyways. I made her do this anyways, I should say, which is not true.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so then, unfortunately, the next thing that happened was Victor died.
Yeah, that was. I actually cried. The first read, I cried.
Well, it was really tough. And then I think what makes Victor's death was so hard too was because he brought up the fact that like his last words to her were just about like, I didn't protect you. Like I should have protected you better. Like as a man, like all these things that, all these emotions that started coming up and that, really broke her. And then you see the first time she totally loses it because then she stabs Lord Mazine.
Yeah. Not stabbed, dismembers.
Well, yeah. I'm like, that's a nice way of saying it, but basically she was like, ah! Like just went crazy.
She basically just went blind with rage. Like, I mean, he literally, like, Cass, like, had to do, like, a pressure point or whatever to, like, knock her out. Like, she was out of control. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really it was a really intense thing, and very quickly then they decided that they didn't want her to stay there anymore, so she was going to get on the road with Cass, and then this is the first time we officially see Kieran, the baby.
Yeah.
Kieran, and then they get on the road, and then we get our first feel of Honeydew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kieran is there, just like he always is, watching.
Oh.
It's just like
I love Kieran. Honestly, Kieran's the best.
I know. That's why I'm like, I told them before the start, I was like, we got to give more Kieran love. So, like, I'm just pointing out the fact that he was there. Like, it's just so weird.
He's literally there, like, all the time.
Yeah, like, homeboy, do you not know what a door is? Like, I'm just a little, or like 10 feet away. Like, just wondering. Like, she's...
Well, okay, but in the forest... He was several feet away. It's not his fault that he
could have. He was guarding. He was guarding at a reasonable distance.
Okay, sure.
He wasn't like sitting at the door to the tent. He was like walking.
He has hypersensitive and
right, but she didn't know that. And the stuff they were doing was outside of clothing.
That's true.
Just,
that's true.
But I don't know. He said Golden can smell better than Atlanteans.
Of course they can. Of course.
So like.
Yeah.
I don't know what the distance is.
This is a really, so like, this is actually a really funny story. Someone was like, when I found out about what Honeydew meant. So I had not read From Blood and Ash up until I had finished Silver Flames, and then just made the decision, like, I was going to read it, enjoy it, you know, whatever. And I thought the entire time Honeydew was boobs. Like, I just thought that's what it was. Like, I was convinced because they were melons, and I was like, obviously, it's her boobs, you know? And I was reading this book, and I was waiting and waiting. I was working from home, and my coworker was a sales rep who was very attractive. And he like texted me, and he was like, can you come to this meeting? Like, it's, and I was like, of course, like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, 15 minutes. And I was like, crap. So I'm like, you know, making myself look presentable for this client, you know. And I look down, and I'm at the Honeydew chapter, and I was like, this is the worst time to schedule a last minute meeting. Like, I couldn't focus. I couldn't even tell you what the meeting was about, other than I was there and I gave the correct information. And then I went straight to the Discord and was like, y'all are sneaky, because I didn't realize that's what Honeydew meant. And that was traumatizing.
Yeah, as it would be.
Yeah. So
the man has a healthy appetite for Honeydew.
Ooh, yeah.
Very, very healthy appetite.
Yeah, loves the Honeydew.
Also, like, why you gotta choose Honeydew? That's not even that great.
You know, exactly.
I feel like it's more reasonable. I feel like it's more realistic. Like, I don't know if you guys have read Legacy of the Nine Realms. He's talking about pineapple.
Yeah, that's
not
true.
Specifically for, but I feel like Honeydew is like, I don't like Honeydew, but like, I could see how
he loves Honeydew. I'm like,
but he
loves Honeydew, y'all.
Like, that man.
But
like, what are the chances of the War of Two Queens? Like, what are the chances that, like, his first thing is gonna be Honeydew? Like, you know what I mean?
High.
It's gotta be high.
Okay, but I wonder, Honeydew, like, the way that certain things like love has a flavor, like from emotions, and like when she drinks his blood, that has a flavor. Sure. Like, what if, like, low key, Honeydew is legitimately the flavor he tastes on her, and then what does she taste the flavor on him?
I'm so
wait. I'm trying to think. That would be in the Crown of Gilded Bones. We'd have to check.
I don't think she didn't. I don't.
Okay. I don't
think that finished in the place we're thinking.
Okay.
Wait, really?
No, I don't think she, like, I don't.
Wait, I gotta know what's happening.
I'm blushing. I think it's chapter 24 if you're trying to pull it up.
Someone look it up.
I think it's 24. Oh my God, I can grab it. I have it. Hold on. Oh my God, I'm like crying. Oh my God. Stop. Guys, I am like literally bright red. I'm sweating now.
You're really not. You look
really
great.
Not. Yeah, you look great. Oh my God, it's so funny.
Oh my God.
If anybody's bright red, it's me, and I'm not even blushing.
I'm just sweating.
I will say chapter 24 is where it is. I was right.
Bravo.
Wow.
Bravo.
He says, fuck, I love that goddamn diary. Oh my God.
I mean, we do too. We do too.
Yeah, we all love the diary. No, but
I literally can't breathe.
I'm just trying to, like, why do I feel like he had to have? Because I feel like if he did.
Okay, he did.
Yeah, because Karen would have probably said something. Like,
I'm not going to say anything, but it says against my tongue, but it doesn't give a flavor.
Come on, Poppy.
Oh my God.
That's so disappointing.
Okay, but when she senses love,
it's chocolate.
Chocolate and strawberries.
Chocolate and berries, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, where do we? Oh, right, Honeydew. Okay, I was like, where did we leave off?
Sorry, guys.
I'm gonna have a coughing fit. I'll be right back.
Honeydew.
Yeah. Okay. So that was the first night in the Blood Forest.
And then they went to
the first mention.
Yes, and then they went to New Haven.
Yes, and there was a Craven attack on the way, and her gift was revealed to people.
Yes, and they were kind of like shocked about the gift. I think it was the first time he found out, or no, he didn't. Did he know about it before?
He didn't know at all. Some of the guards had heard rumors of her helping, like, oh, it's real, like the rumors were real, but he was totally shocked. He had no idea.
Okay, I wonder if that was his first indication that she was Atlantean, or I wonder if it really was the first time they had blood.
I really think it was the first time that he fed from her. I really do.
Okay. I was just curious.
I don't think he realized.
Okay, so then they went to New Haven, and then they did it.
Yeah, they sleep together. And actually, that was the other thing about knowing that she's part Atlantean. Later, she reveals that like the scar on her leg is from a bite, and he's like, "Well, shit! If you had told me that, I would have known you were part Atlantean, because you wouldn't have turned into a Craven then." But the night they slept together, she consciously like looked at his scars and thought about telling him, and she didn't. And it's like, man,
I do remember her looking at his scars, and because he was self-conscious of them. Which was kind of sad, but also kind of cute because she doesn't care. Like, he doesn't care. God, they're so cute together. Okay, so then, like, you think it's all happy-go-lucky, everything's going great, and then she's woken up by a guard who tells her that everything is not as it seems, and that they need to go, and Hawk is not there. So then they leave, and they go, and they get to the farm. Isn't it like a barn? They get to like a barn.
They're like in like a tavern type overnight,
it's like,
and they're in the hall and they're leaving, and Kieran's there like, "What you doing?"
Yeah.
And then Phillips like pulls a sword on Kieran and slices him, and then Kieran starts changing, and they're like, "Oh fuck, it's a wolven," which they thought were extinct. And then they run and they like lock themselves in the barn because they're trying to get like the horses, because there's still like a couple other guards, and they're trying to leave.
And then essentially everyone dies. That was potentially
like literally everyone dies. In the fiasco, everyone dies.
And I like to say, I don't know if anyone else felt this way, but there are certain books, like ACOTAR was the first one for me, where I was liking it, like it was okay. And then I got to Mist and Fury, and when you met the Inner Circle, I felt like it was this wave of like, oh my God, I get why people love this book. It was the same feeling in this barn. Once everyone's personalities like started arguing and I was like, it was like this fog had cleared in my brain. And I was like, oh, I get it now. Like,
dude,
so
the
good.
Second Delano was there, I was like, that's my baby.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love him so much. I love him so much.
So much.
Like he should get all the love. Like he's just the best.
I haven't seen any fan art of him, and it's very upsetting.
Honestly, why is there no fan art of him? It's ridiculous.
Not very upsetting.
It's
I'm gonna need Eliza or Inkfei to get on that one, pretty please. Thank you.
So then they bring her. She gets injured in this altercation, unintentionally, or I think it was.
They don't know. Yeah. She hides the injury. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they bring her to a cell, like down. I always like in a dungeon essentially, and that's when Cass comes down, and he's still Hawk. She doesn't know, and then he tells her the truth about the Vampire and the Atlanteans. And for the most part, and we'll go over some of what he says in a bit, but for the most part, we get kind of the juicy details. And then he also finds out that she's injured, and he gets upset. And so he tries to heal the injury, and she gets a little irritated. And then he leaves because he needs to have a meeting with someone, which I believe was the meeting with his dad.
He said it was with his dad, but it ended up being with Alistair. Not his dad, but yes, he basically wanted to be like, I've got her.
Yeah.
So that's why he left.
So he left, and then who comes down? I forget who comes down to grab
Jericho.
Jericho.
It's the same guy that killed Rylan. The guy that had said he was going to feast on her entrails. Yeah, and he did lose a hand. Cass took his hand for injuring her the first time. So he's like super pissed.
Yeah. So he takes her and then basically sets it up to where Mr. Tulis is the one that stabs her. Which, by the way, this is officially now my favorite moment of the story, which is when she gets stabbed, and then Kieran comes in and he's like, "Get the prince, like And so then you start to realize that Castile is the prince. It's when she pieces together that that's who it is, and kind of all that fun jazzy conversation. And then she stabs him. After he heals her. But, then she stabs him, and then she freaks out.
And she gets really horny from the blood, and then she stabs him, and then she cries and runs away.
Yes, and then
Which is an appropriate reaction.
Yeah, totally. and then he takes her to the forest, or he follows her into the forest, and they sleep together, and then he bites from her, and then that was his indication that they are... that she's Atlantean, and then she comes back, she takes a bath, Kieran finds her, So first time Kieran sees her naked. Great. You know, one of
Wait,
many.
Kieran.
One of many. And then he takes her
many more.
one of many more, hopefully. And then they go to the dinner, and then Cass tells everyone he's marrying her. Oh, and everyone, by the way, everyone's dead on the corners. Like all these people are hung or dead or
Yeah, all the people except for Jericho, he left alive with like stakes in him, so he's in like horrible pain. But at the very end, it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna go back to Atlantia because we're gonna marry.
Yeah.
And she's like, what?
Yeah.
Again, an appropriate reaction,
right?
Yeah, she's like, I'm absolutely not marrying you. Absolutely not.
I hope someone says, honestly, at this point, Poppy was the only one that didn't know Hawk was the prince. Yeah, basically, I feel like I definitely knew.
Yeah, I had a feeling from the very beginning when she said like sharp pointy teeth. I was like, I don't think so. But then it was like, I definitely knew before the big reveal, but she didn't find out until he said, call the prince. And then when she was like literally laying there in her own blood, like dying, she heard Kieran like say to him like, Castile. And she was like, what? So
yeah. Okay, so we're gonna quickly just reference a few quotes and stuff from this book, and then we'll move on. But if you guys have any questions about From Blood and Ash, you can ask them now. So the big ones, obviously, in the very beginning, those first few chapters, so chapters 1 through honestly 6, they all are kind of important, except for 5. But the big ones we wanted to bring up, obviously, there's information about the rise, which I do think is going to come up for the War of Two Queens. So, you know, these guards, they are humans. They're not, they're not for the most part ascended people, and it is like a prestigious role to have, but it is also a very dangerous role. And a lot of people are guards. It is also indicated in the first chapter that Poppy is going to ascend on her 19th birthday. She hasn't ascended yet, and everyone is essentially waiting for this blessing. It says that, this is really cute to bring up right before the War of Two Queens, or not. I keep saying the War of Two Queens. I mean the Crown of Gilded Bones. The independence that Poppy chased, I feel like, is something, because that's something that is the reason that woman interfered, was because Poppy was chasing independence, and she knew that Castile was chasing something, so that's why they got together. We also
love him so much.
We also learned that Ian is a storyteller, and so in a lot of his letters, he'll give stories. So the story he wrote last month was about 2 children, a brother and a sister, who swam to the bottom of the Stroud Sea and befriended the water folk. I think now, if I had to take a wild guess, I bet he was hinting things in these little stories. So.
I bet you he was, and we haven't seen more of those stories. It was just that one reference. But then when we find out stuff in like the different lines in Flesh and Fire, I was like, huh.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously we meet the woman at the Red Pearl, and she says, you have the look of one who is in need of a hiding place. And yes, the Red Pearl, that is easily recognizable look. Upstairs, try the 6th door on the left. Why would you help me? And is what Poppy asks, and says, because everyone should live a little, even for a few hours. And then she also tells her that she looks like a second daughter, but not as it seems.
You are a second daughter, but not in the way you think.
Yeah.
Which comes up later, again and again.
Later. So, which I think has everyone, especially with the big prophecy at the end of A Shadow in the Amber, it has people kind of wondering what her role is. Chapter 2, there's the mention of the cave cat. This is one of those first few mentions. So, he moved of the same inherent predatory grace that belonged to the large gray cave cats that usually roamed the wastelands and had once seen at the Queen's Palace as a child. So that's important. Oh, don't forget the Hawk POV. Yeah, we didn't go over that in this notes, but yes, if you should read the Hawk POV because it's very good.
Absolutely.
Then they have their first kiss. She does feel something sharp, which is kind of funny. And he obviously figures out very quickly it's her. It's the first time he calls her a princess. He tells her that he's a farmer, and that death is an old friend who pays a visit, sometimes when it's least expected, at other times when you're waiting for her. It's neither the first nor the last time she'll pay a visit, but it doesn't make death any less harsh or unforgiving. And I think it's cool that he thinks of death as a female, which is very interesting. It's a very interesting thought. And then chapter 3, just kind of the two things. One is her dagger. We just wanted to bring up again that Poppy's dagger is made of woven bone. It is a bloodstone dagger. She received it for her 16th birthday from Victor. So it is, it has sentimental value. It is something that she loves and cherishes, and she wears all the time. And then Tawny is introduced in this chapter. So just wanted to quickly call out the fact Tawny is very important, and she was introduced there. And then chapter 4, Craven and Pain. So this is what I temporarily called it. But it's essentially when she first time heals someone, or not heals someone, sorry. She takes the pain of someone away. And then from someone who was attacked by a Craven. And then we get a bunch of information about the Craven. It's basically a massive info dump about the Craven. Pretty much, I'm sure everyone here knows about the Craven, but I'll just quickly say, so the Craven were creations of the Atlanteans, the product of their poisonous kiss, which was acted like an infection, turning innocent men, women, and children into starving creatures whose body's mind became twisted, decayed by ceaseless hunger. Even though the majority of Atlanteans had been hunted to extinction, many still existed, and there only needed to be one Atlantean alive for there to be dozens of Craven, if not more. They were completely mindless, and they could only be controlled by the Dark One. So I know the Dark One is something that people are kind of starting to circle in on. I hope we get that answer in the War of Two Queens. So, but I think it's less about that the Dark One's controlling. We talked about this a little bit, that we don't think he's necessarily controlling the Craven, but more the mist potentially around the Craven.
Yeah, the mist relates to like things we see in A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire with the mist and like the Aos, so it could be related to the gods, but we're not sure that the Craven really just kind of seem hungry.
Right. Well, in the mist, you're right, because we do see in like the later books, especially in the Chronicle of Bones and A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, like it has very different properties. So, okay. Let's see. Anyone cursed with the Craven bite did not die in their beds quietly as peaceful. Did not die in their beds as quietly and peacefully as possible. They were not afforded the kindness or sympathy. Instead, they were generally dragged into the town square and burned alive for the mass of citizens. It didn't matter that the most became cursed or even protecting those cheered. Their horrific demise are working better for the kingdom. So essentially, anyone in the kingdom who was found out to be bitten by a Craven is then just burned alive. And so Poppy and Victor do this thing where they, allow these people to die with dignity, and they, kill them in a different way. When he dies, this man that Poppy is here to help remove the pain, he looks at Poppy and says, "Are you Rain? Have you come to take me in the end?" Because he thought that Poppy was Rain, the common man of endings and the god of death, which we later isn't this the god that we later find out is like not actually God? No, there's one in their list that isn't.
Yeah,
true, right?
there's a lot that we find out later that isn't there. In Gilded Bones, you mean?
Well, no.
I don't remember which one it is in Gilded Bones.
In A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, Kieran's like, "Oh yeah, they have one false god in their list."
Oh shoot!
But I don't remember which one it is. I just know it's like in that list of gods. And then the only other thing he says right before Poppy kills him is, "You are chosen, born in the shroud of the gods, protected even inside the womb, veiled from birth," which is something Poppy has heard since she is the maiden. Okay, so then we're just going right to chapter 6. This is the history of the War of Two Queens. This is a really good chapter to reference anyways before you start the War of Two Queens, because this talks about the War of Two Kings. I think I said queens, I meant kings. So this is when you find out what the Atlanteans look like. She does a little bit of research on her end to kind of determine. I'm not going to read it, but it is in the notes just because it's not really true. So it's
what Soulless has told their people Atlanteans are like.
Yes. And so, and then they do go through they talk a little bit about the culling, which is also referenced in there. They also explain the fangs, and that Atlanteans are capable of passing their blood to mortals. Paris, the god of right. Thank you. I knew there was a fake god. Thank you. Okay. All right. Moving on. Let me just pull this up. So then we go to chapter 9, which is the city council meeting. And I know, Kate, you felt like this was a good one for us to kind of discuss. So, I mean, to set the stage, the idea here is that this is a city council meeting. This is right before the rite. And this is when the first time we meet the Toulis family.
Yes. Well, there's two things in chapter 9. One is the mural with the gods on it on the ceiling. So basically she lists out all the gods and what they are the god of.
Yes.
So that's important. That's on page 156. And then for the city council meeting, they have this like every single week. And the Toulis family, Mr. and Mrs. Toulis, come with their son Tobias, who is like he's like brand new.
Yeah.
He's a third son, which means he would get the honor of going to the gods at like, I think it's like a month old or something.
Yeah.
And they get to go and serve the gods. And he has that privilege. But their first son like died in the last month. And their second son died before his first year, both from this blood sickness, which we find out in Flesh and Fire is not a real thing.
Yeah.
Or no, not even Flesh and Fire. It's like at the end of From Blood and Ash is actually just the vampires losing control. So they basically say, we don't want to give you our third son. We've already lost 2. And they're like, no, they have no sympathy for them at all. Yeah. And they aren't even going to ask the gods. They're like, we wouldn't even ask them that. You need to follow the rules.
Yeah. And the other thing, the chapter ends with I think a really poetic line, which just says that the Ascended are no longer mortal. And it is something that I think haunts Poppy quite a bit because, you know, she's moving into this direction and it kind of scares her to see that they don't have those instincts.
They've lost their humanity.
Yeah.
Which sucks.
Yeah, completely. Okay, so then chapter 11, which is when we officially get to see Mr. Castile Hawk Flynn officially pledge his life to Poppy as the guard. And he says, with my sword and my life, I vow to keep you safe, Penelope. From this moment until the last moment, I am yours. Which he's supposed to do. He's supposed to say to the maiden, but he does it to Poppy, which obviously irritated the Duke and Duchess a little bit. But it's still very sweet and sentimental.
I think just like a random comment about that is one, Tawny said he said it like sex, which we love. Yeah. And then also in the description, it says he spoke with a voice deep and smooth, reminding me of rich, decadent chocolate, which we find out chocolate and berries is later like what love smells like. Yeah. And that, I guess you could argue like the Heartmaid thing with that. I'm like, just his voice was chocolatey.
Yeah, you totally could. That's a good point. Are you showing the cover? Are those the fairy lutes?
Yeah.
I was gonna say I didn't get the fairy loot ones.
I spent an exorbitant amount of money on them.
Well, I mean, same.
Again.
Same. So I get it. And then this is also the first. Oh, and then this is a really important scene, which is also when she gets unveiled, and the Duke says half of her face a masterpiece, the other half a nightmare. And then Hawk's gaze remained fastened on mine as he stepped forward. Both halves are as beautiful as the whole. So this is, you know, like, and I know we all like clutch our pearls. Like, it's just so sweet.
He's so good. Oh
yeah, he really is just the best. And then to totally bring it now to a sad moment. Chapter 13, which is the Duke's punishment. And the reason this one's important to bring up is I do think it is something that will be, I mean, we see in the Crown of Gilded Bones when the Queen finds out about the Duke's punishment, she gets really upset. So I'm sure it is something that's kind of top of mind. There is also, the Duke at one point says there are other scars too easy to hide but this, and he sighs almost sympathetically. There will come a time when there will be no veil to hide this unfortunate flaw, and he's talking about her face. He also says you look so much like your mother. Half of her is truly stunning. There was a pause. You look so much like her. She didn't realize that he knew her mother. And she asks him, and he says, I did. She was special. But before I could even question, he said, you do realize that the guard wouldn't have said otherwise, wouldn't have spoken the truth. So he's talking about Hawk. I always wondered, did he really know her mother, or is he thinking of the other woman?
Ooh.
I don't know. Kind of a random thought. And then he also says, I know it may be hard to keep boundaries with someone you spend so much time with, but the maiden does not seek intimacies of the heart or the mind with those to serve him, not even those who are to become members of the court. You must never forget that you are not like them. You were chosen by the gods at birth, and they are chosen at the right. You will never be equals. You will never be friends. And she tells this, and Tierman she says she understands. And they say, you were chosen at birth, Penelope. Only one other has ever been chosen by the gods. It is why the Dark One sent the Craven after your family. It is why your parents were slaughtered. So just some more kind of questionable developments.
He's a really nice guy, if anyone's wondering.
Yeah,
he's really just like top tier in terms of what we expect from men.
Exactly. So then chapter 16, this is the first time Poppy's on the rise. I just pulled the 2 quotes that I thought were really cute, which is the one where he goes, "Oh, I don't think so." He turned sharply, and suddenly my back and bow were against the stone wall of the rise. The contact sent a dull wave of fire over my healing back, but he pressed in, caging my body in his. There was barely an inch between us. After all we share, you throw a dagger in my face? After all we share, it was a handful of minutes and a few kisses, I said. And then Hawk sensed my movement. You're so incredibly violent. He paused. I think I like it. Let me go, I see. And be kicked or stabbed. He shoved his leg between mine, preventing any future kicks. We've already covered that, princess, more than once. So it's the only time he doesn't want her to stab him.
It's the princess for me.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So that's a really cute moment. And then I know chapter 17, it also kind of leads into that adorableness. And then moving on to chapter 19, this is when she talks to the Duchess about her gift and its maturing. So the ones that I pulled was obviously the Duchess asks if she can feel her emotions, and so Poppy tries and says she can't, which the Duchess then says good, and she kind of acts a little like relieved that she couldn't feel it. Like you can tell like there's a sense of yeah, she's just relieved. And then it says, she says, I believe your gift is maturing. The bright light above her glittering off the obsidian ring. So this is normal, Poppy asks. Yes, I do believe so, but I wouldn't tell His Grace about this. So she's asking that he not tell the Duke, which is dun, dun, dun. And then they talk about the First Maiden.
Yeah. Well, she said it would upset him because he knew the First Maiden, which I'm like, what does that mean? In what way?
Yeah, exactly. Like what is that? So it says, you remind me of the First Maiden. Did this happen to the previous maiden? It did. It says, what do you know about the First Maiden? Nothing. I admitted, I don't even know her name or where she lived. There's a reason for that. Princess or priestess never told me anything. She ignored my questions about her ascension. And then she basically tells her that like there is a rule that, you know, that you cannot speak of her. Her name is not even worthy of our lips, nor the air we breathe. If it were possible, I'd have her name and history scrubbed entirely. Was she found unworthy of the gods? By some miracle she wasn't, but that doesn't mean she was worthy. So there's kind of just a lot of information. It says her actions put her on the path that ended her. The Dark One killed her. And I still don't know if this is a true story or not.
I don't know. I mean, we learn about like Castiel's captivity and Flesh and Fire, and part of me was thinking about that on my reread. I was like, is it possible that maybe he and his like maybe the maiden was there and maybe he did, like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, so I think it's a bit interesting. And then we go to chapter 20, which is about the priestesses. So the priestess has Poppy read some text, and this is around the War of Two Kings. So after the destruction that decimated entire cities, thousands of lives, the world ended on the brink of chaos. On the eve of the Battle of Broken Bones, Jalara, Solus of the Vendita Isles, gathered his forces outside the city of Pompeii for the last Atlantean stronghold. It sat at the foot of the Skotos Mountains. Nyctos, the king of gods, and his son Theon, the god of war, appeared before Jalara. His army, having grown distrustful of the Atlantean people and their unnatural thirst for blood and power, they sought to aid in cruelty and oppression. King Jalara, Solus, and his army were brave, but Nyctos in his wisdom saw that they could not defeat the Atlanteans. What?
I just realized that they said Vendita Isles, which that phrase comes up in a certain book. Which I did not realize till just this exact moment.
Yeah.
A new tabby tab.
Yeah, I'm like, literally.
Yeah. You know who else came from the Vodina Isles? The Deniers.
What? Wait, why am I missing this information?
Yeah, Cass says it in Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. It's either in Kingdom of Flesh and Fire or the Crown of Gilbones.
Isn't this the chapter where she says Skodos and then the priest tries to correct her and Cass?
She says Skodos and she's like, I don't even know, Skudos.
I don't even know what she
I don't
said.
know.
And
I don't even know what other way you could
pronounced
say
it perfectly F off, and you're just like,
yes. Yeah. So they kind of have that conversation. So there's just we basically, when you guys for anyone who's going to get the notes, it's just a lot of, I just threw in basically a lot of the backstory of this war. It says, unwillingly to see the failure of Jalara and of the Vodina Isles, Niktos gave the gods first blessing, sharing with Jalara his army the blood of gods. Boiled with the strength and power, Jalara of the Vodina Isles and his army were able to defeat the Atlanteans during the Battle of Broken Bones, therefore ending the reign and the corrupt of the wretched kingdom. So essentially, it was just a lot. The problem is we know the truth, but essentially what they're trying to say here is King Jalara, who is the king of he is the ascended king of Solus. He essentially pleaded with Niktos so that they could win the war against the Atlanteans, which we know is false. Mm-hmm. Because the gods have been asleep this entire time.
They've been sleep.
Yeah.
They've been sleeping. So, yeah. That is essentially what's happening. So, then it is... So it's just a lot of history in chapter 20. 21 is obviously the diary of Willow Collins. I just want to shout that out again, that she was on the ledge to get this book because she heard the girls were talking about it and she wanted it. And then Cass finds her, or Hawk finds her, and kind of like pokes at her a little bit, but also says like, of course you didn't get away from me. Like, I obviously know. So that is a fun little diggy dig. And then chapter 22 is when he continues to kind of dig at her. They talk a little bit more about what's like in the book, and he kind of makes fun of her a little bit. So just some fun little call outs. We talked about the Willow, which is chapter 24 of From Blood and Ash. Then obviously the Kiss was chapter 25. And then chapter 26 was when Victor had died. And again, I was going to say that he says to Poppy before he dies, please forgive me. Please forgive. What does he say? Look at me. I'm so sorry for not protecting you. I failed you as a man. Forgive me. And she says, you've done nothing wrong. And she goes, I forgive you. I forgive you. And then he passes away. So that was... Yeah. Kind of that.
And I think that was extra traumatic because in 25, after Under the Willow, is when her and Cass run into Victor.
Yes.
And she basically unloads everything she's been holding in this whole time about how she has no freedom and all this stuff. And that was like, I think the first time she was really, I don't even know if it was honest with herself, but at least honest with Victor about the way she was feeling in this position that she was put in. So I think that made, when he dies, it's like, he really is like, please forgive me. Like, I don't think he realized like,
yeah.
I think he was maybe semi-aware of what was going on, but I think that probably also added to his guilt.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I think if he were to have lived, past that night, there probably would have been a conversation about like getting her out of this, because I think he felt extremely protective over her, regardless if there was divine intervention involved in that or not, which I know is still kind of up for debate on that situation. But it is a very... It's still very sad. I think Victor's death was, while Ryland's was important, I think Victor's death was probably the first one that really like hit her.
Yeah.
And then, okay, now I'm skipping all the way to chapter 30, which is when he feels the honeydew for the first time. And I just wanted to include the part that Kieran was watching, because it says that he was watching, because I just think it's so funny every time that he's just there watching.
I mean, I don't think he's not like there with like binoculars.
No.
He's just like guarding the general area.
Yes.
Yeah. But he can hear and maybe smell. Like he knows he knows.
he knows what's going on, but at the same time, like Kieran's super protective over both of them, and just so like he knows.
I don't
and
know
he
that he was
wants
at
them
that
to be
point
together.
though.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like he's very protective over Cass. I don't think he was yet for Poppy. I think that came over time during A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. But
Right.
I think
But like he understood, he at least
Yeah.
at that point understood how protective Cass was over Poppy.
Yes.
Because we know that from the whole barn incident. So
yeah.
Yeah.
If I had to make a guess, I would say that like probably after Cass had bitten her, because I know she obviously then went back up to the room, and there was a period of time when they both weren't in the room with her. They probably had a separate conversation about like, so I think she's my heartmate, and I think like this is where we were never gonna give her up, you know. And I'm sure Kieran's
we gotta change the plan.
yeah, and I'm sure Kieran's like, time out. So what's happened? Because it's so
right after everything's figured out is when like he is basically telling Poppy like, I think his plans changed a long time ago. It's like when your friend is looking at your relationship and they're just like, they just have a totally better perspective on everything.
Yeah.
So I don't think that in the Blood Forest he knew, but I think it like progressed a little bit. And then after Cass gave Poppy his blood and then did it again when she didn't even really need it after the carriage stuff in Flesh and Fire, I think he was like, this chick's here forever. There's no way he's letting her go. Like 100%. That's serious.
Okay, so because I know we're getting close to the end of this. So the first time, obviously, chapter 33 is the first time that they sleep together. And then chapter 35.
33 they sleep together,
yeah. And then chapter 35 is when I put Cass is being a little dick. So this is when he says, that would have done some damage. She told me good. I growled. Now you'd be disappointed later if I couldn't use it. She's trying to cut off his dick. So like there's just some really, again, it's really funny banter between the two of them, but they're, you know, she's so mad at him and he is in a way kind of like undermining it because I don't think he wanted to accept how mad she was at him. Like I think he was trying to make light of it.
Like if I was her, that's like one of those moments when people are like making fun of you almost while you're angry. That's where I get like raging mad to where you're like crying. Like it's like you don't value my anger. So that part actually kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, dude,
right.
She's allowed to be mad at you. You messed up. Like she's allowed to be mad.
You 100%. And then I also think in that chapter there was also a really good line about it was when she had pieced together that he was an Atlantean. Like she had finally, and her first thing she says to him is, "You're a monster." And it says that Hawk's eyes flared gold and then they weren't normal. They never been natural. He says, "You finally see me for what I am." But it's like, it's a different meat. Like he does see himself as a monster. Whereas like, he's not understanding that she's calling him a monster because he's just Atlantean, not because he's like a bad person. And it's like,
yeah. Well, and then we have quotes later where he talks about how he wasn't born a monster, but he was made into one due to what the Ascended have done.
Yes. And at this point too, like when you're just reading this book, you're pretty much convinced he's the Dark One.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like you think that's who he is. And then as you get further, I think in the second book, he's like, I'm not the Dark One. And then you're like, wait, then who was? Like, who is this guy? So it's just been kind of a big question. Chapter 36 is when you get the truth. So this is like the dump about the Craven are actually the Atlanteans' fault, and you get all the actual true information about that. You know, there are monsters in the mist, that there was this war, that King Malik, see, I'm like working on the names.
That was good.
Yeah, thanks. King Malik fell in love with Isbeth, and they ascended her, and that is what started this whole, you know, ascension process. And so because he would not harm her or anything, it just continued. And so that is what started this whole war. When it says when the peers discovered what they did, he lifted the laws that forbade it. But as more vampires were created and they couldn't control their bloodlust, the Queen of Atlantia, Queen Eloana, tried to stop it. And she made an act for the ascension to be forbidden once more and ordered all the vampires to be destroyed. The death toll of the war was not exaggerated. In fact, many more. The numbers are really high. They weren't defeated. Prince Malik was overthrown, divorced, and exiled. Queen Eloana remarried to the new king, a Daenerys, and they pulled their forces back. The vampire, you know, gained control. The king and queen Jalara and Ileana renamed the kingdom Solus. They called themselves the Ascended. They use our gods. So it's just, there's a lot of information here. This is also when you find out about the culling. Oh, keep going. Sorry.
That quote specifically, it talks about why Isbeth was ascended and who caused that.
Yeah.
In a way. And I missed that. I thought when we got to at the end of Gilded Bones, when that was like revealed, I was shocked. Like I totally did not pay attention. I literally was like, oh my gosh, no way. And like it literally was given to us in the first book.
Yeah. No,
literally
but that's fair.
Right there.
It's okay. There was something that happened in Sky and Breath, and I was telling Ashley on the phone, I was like, did you know that this happened? And she was like, yeah. Did you read the chapter? And I was like,
did you read the book?
like, no, I just never noticed. So like, and it's nothing big, but it is like, it's like one of those things where like you just skip over something, especially in a massive info dump. So
it's like four words.
Yeah.
And I like skipped it. And I'm like, seriously? But it was like a really cool shock at the end. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly. So then they talk about the feeding. So then he says, you know, that the Craven and the Ascended, they do need to feed, and they do it frequently. They can't procreate, not even after the Ascension, and many experience bloodlust, and they feed often, killing mortals in the process. Atlanteans don't feed on mortals. Mortal blood offers us nothing of any real value because we were never mortal. Wolvens don't need to feed. We do, and we feed from other Atlanteans, which also include Wolven, but he does not explain that in this part. However, we do know that he can feed from a Wolven.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say a vampire cannot make another vampire. They cannot complete the ascension. When they drain the mortal, they create a Craven. So just to kind of explain the differences. Chapter 37 is my personal favorite because this is when Poppy gets stabbed, and I love a good stabbing scene. So
you love Carol in this house.
Oh my god, I absolutely love it.
It's so dramatic, and like literally every time we've talked about this, and when she's like dying, every time I'm like, she's like on the ground, and I'm like acting it out. It's so dramatic, and I love it.
I love it. Someone's like, I feel like the info dump in CC1 is nothing compared to this series. You know, it's a very different type of info dump. Like
it's different. It's different. This was so much easier for me than Crescent City 1.
Yeah, I think you pinned it on the nail when you said earlier, because the characters know what's going on. It like in Crescent City, it's like you feel lost. Whereas with this, at least you're like piecing it together with Poppy. You're like, oh, okay.
Poppy's blind. She's new. She's in a way very new to this world. She's basically lived in Castle Tierman this whole time, and so you're learning it as she goes.
Yeah.
But I think there is both series have a lot of deception. I think that's. You could compare. They both have a lot of deception and things that like people don't know.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I think Crescent City was hard because they already knew the world and we didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
I had to convince somebody in this chat to read
Crescent City.
I had to reread it, but the first one, it took me 3 weeks to get through the first 150 pages of Crescent City the first time I read it. And I normally read like books that size in like 3 days.
Right. Well, yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so
Crescent City 2.
Done.
So good.
Listen, we're gonna be talking about it for months. I already know that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything, but so good.
I know.
Yeah, so good.
Okay, so Mr. Tulis he's the one that stabs Poppy in chapter 35. And when he does, she says, which I think kind of I love that she says this, but she says, "I was relieved when I didn't see you and your son at the right." And I think he just. Man,
she saw like the relief, like in his eyes. I think she immediately saw the regret, like, oh my god, I can't believe, like he fucked up so bad.
Yeah, he totally did. And so then, and then obviously she's laying there. Delano is the one. He's still in his Wolven form. He's standing next to her, nudging her head.
Baby.
And then Kieran comes running, and he says, "Get the prince now." So then that starts chapter 38, which is when Cass uses his compulsion to heal Poppy, and then it says that she's healed. She gets a little, whoop whoop. She wants to have a little fun time with him, and he tries to stop her, which is like, honestly, good job, Cass. Like, we love a good mortal danger, always. Anytime.
Honestly, the amount of times Sarah and I will be like, hey, I'm reading Mortal Peril right now.
Yeah, it's funny, like, some people, they're like, comfort is like, oh, I want to read Mist and Fury when everyone's at the dinner table and they're all talking, and I'm like, that's great. So I'm gonna read when Poppy gets stabbed like 40 times, and I'll call you back. Like,
yeah.
No, I totally agree.
It's always that, or like one of my favorite fan fictions is like, it's like mortal peril.
Wait, which
and I'm
one?
just like, give it to me. It's Izzy's.
Oh, well, yeah.
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 Izzy has so many fan fictions, but like 7 of them are like straight mortal peril, and I'm just like, give it to me.
It's really funny too, because Izzy, just to like quickly like divert this, Izzy's working on another fanfic, and she was like, I could add another mortal peril scene, and I was like, challenge accepted. Like,
yes.
Like we will figure out where to insert it, and then she has to write it.
Yeah, because Sarah and I are both beta-ing it, and so we're like, oh, you could use some more danger here, and she's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I will say, this is one of the things that JLA kills, because in this book, in Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, and The Crown of Gilded Bones, like, in a sight, like, the mortal danger is so good in all of those books.
Basically, the first part of The Crown of Gilded Bones I could just reread on repeat.
Oh my god, it's so good. It's so good. You're just like the whole time, your anxiety, you're like, oh my god, oh my god.
Yeah.
It's always the best. Yeah.
When we did our Crown of Gilded Bones live, I had read it. I received the arc for it, so I knew when it was coming, and one of the girls did not. She had to wait for hers. Like, it didn't drop at midnight like it was supposed to. So we all stayed up and read, and they all laughed at me because I picked the chapter to read out loud. They were like, Sarah, why are you picking this random chapter? And I was like, because. Like,
it's the same way we did the popcorn reading for Alex with Kingdom of Ash, and you chose to read that chapter.
Yeah, I did.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting there just bawling my eyes out again.
Yeah, I don't cry, but I love it. Anyways, so Cass reveals himself in that chapter, and then it ends with her stabbing him in the chest. She runs, so then chapter 39 is when she runs into the forest. He chases after her. They have a little bit of hanky-panky in the forest, and he also bites her. And when he does, he says, I can't believe it, but I should have known. Which is, he at the time believes she's an Atlantean. So...
Half Atlantean.
Yes, yes.
Izzy's here.
Yeah, Izzy's a Taurus. Sarah's a Taurus and doesn't cry. That's correct. I am. And then basically those were kind of the big beats. And then obviously this book ends with the massive cliffhanger of, she's going to be my wife. We're going to Atlantia and she's going to be my wife. And everyone's like, what did you just say? So now we are on a Kingdom of Flesh and Fire.
Want to run that back by me one more time?
Yeah. Okay. So, some questions we have. I just want to go ahead and go through them. So, what is one scene or moment that has become one of your favorites now that you know a lot more of the world? Like an aha moment 2 books later. So, what was your favorite moment in From Blood and Ash that was like an aha moment now? I'm trying to think. For me, I feel like it's any time. Well, the Red Pearl is like a joy to read now, but
it's gotta be the lady who sent her up to the room in the Red Pearl.
Yeah, that's huge.
From Blood and Ash.
It's either that for me, or it's when because I remember reading the book and the only thing I highlighted was that list of gods, and if you look at that list of gods, besides the one that is the fake god, which Kieran later tells which one it is. Those are all the gods in a site. Yeah. Like, which I love. Like, they're all the ones in a site that are with Nyktos. Like, they're not the other ones. So it's like, it's a fun indication for us of like what's to come potentially. And that has always been like a fun little thing. And then I'll ask the question again when we get to Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. But do we think Kieran has a different flavor than Cass, if we're following Kate's theory, for joining research purposes?
Oh my God. I don't, well, she didn't give us a flavor for like what that actually is, but we know his like imprint later has a flavor, like has different, his person has a different scent. So I would imagine so.
Yeah. And then what was our favorite moment from book 1 all around?
Probably... it's probably a tie between the Rise scene, like between him and
I love that.
Like the Rise with Hawk and Poppy leading into the confrontation that follows, like that moment.
Yeah.
Or it's probably like the I'm gonna marry you reveal at the end, where I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I feel like action scenes are separate from spice. And I personally loved, like, the sex in the snow was great, especially when she, like, switched positions and did that by accident and was like, whoa, this is fun.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. I absolutely love that. But yeah, I think like we were saying, like the mortal danger. I mean, when my heart is like racing, you're like, oh my God, she like, you know, it's a series. Like she's not gonna die.
Yeah.
But like that, like I love that. Like it's just it really gets me.
Yeah, I think for me it is 100% when she gets stabbed, and then Kieran's there, and then Cass. Like it was the first indication for me to like the Delano Kieran. Like I looped Delano in because like he is for some reason like always like the third wheel and then like the outskirts.
Like he like nudges her head. It's like he's like minor, but it's like so precious. Like I love it so much.
And I feel like Kieran's face when he discovers it is because I think at that point Kieran did know that there was a connection between the two of them, and if anything at that point it was more like she can't die because he will lose his mind type of a situation. So yeah, that would be my my guess. Okay, so then we're gonna move on to A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. I don't think we're gonna, I mean, kind of the big beats for this, and we're gonna go through them chapter by chapter, but the big ones I just want to quickly highlight for everyone. The main story arc of this.
I'm gonna step away for like 1 minute.
Yeah,
but keep going.
You're good. The main story arc, obviously, for A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire is. Oh, hold on, I'm gonna mute her. Just because I can hear myself in the echo. Is that, you know, they are now trying to get to Atlantia, and along the way, you know, there obviously are bumps in the road, but more importantly, we are learning more history around Atlantia and who they are, and we're also trying to piece together who Poppy is and what her relationship is with Castile at this point. So that is really the main goal here, and you know, we'll go through some of those bigger beats, but the main gist of this second book was, okay, it's time, we got to get moving. And it's time for you to learn the truth and also just like understand what being engaged to the prince is like.
Yeah.
Which is very, very wild. I love everyone's like, Jayla does the best cliffhangers. She does. She kills the cliffhanger. Okay.
I hate cliffhanger, but I love her books.
Yeah. Okay, so the first chapter, I feel like the most important thing to bring up is obviously Cass rips out the heart of someone because they basically insult Poppy's face, and she flinches, and Cass doesn't like that, and so he literally grabs the wolven's chest and pulls out the heart and says, "What a man, what a man, what a man, what a man." You're gonna get me copywritten. Stop it. Sorry. But it is like, I feel like we all swooned in that moment. Like, it was so hot. Like,
yes,
it's so good. Hold on, there you go. I'm unmuting you. Yeah, so I feel like that was a really big thing. Oh, did you notice the eye color change in the Crown of Gilded Bones in a site about the Draken? Yes, there is like a very subtle conversation in the Crown of Gilded Bones and a site, which we will get into next week, but yes, I did notice that. Okay, so obviously there was the heart removal. That was like a big, oh my gosh, clutch your pearls moment. And then chapter 6 of that book is when Cass reveals the truth. So this is when he basically explains, like, yeah, we're going to get married, and this is kind of my history, and this is my past, which was a big deal for their relationship at that time.
Yeah.
Chapter 7 is the first nightmare. So obviously the nightmares are something that are very relevant in all of the books past this point.
Yeah.
We see that, you know, play out in the Crown of Gilded Bones. I think we'll probably hopefully get some resolution in the War of Two Queens regarding the nightmares. But the big thing here is in this first nightmare, it's still very kind of fuzzy for her, but she knows that there's a man there. She thinks his name is Lacoste. Her mom puts her in a cupboard and tells her to hide. She knows that her mom is hurt, and she says, you know, you must be quiet so your papa can come find us. Then she smells a woman who smells of sugar and vanilla. And then there's a high-pitched howl. And then she feels this sticky, her fingers dig into the sticky waist of her dress. You have to let go, baby. You need to hide, Poppy. And then there's a rush of water, and the nightmare sounds were louder. Then there was a voice again. Mama, her hands were getting wetter and stickier. Someone then knocks over a lamp, and glass is shattered. There's more screaming. She's looking for her mom. Then a body crashes into her. And then she sees hands grab her, but they were too heavy. And then there's a voice that says, this somewhere in the darkness, living under the screams, what a pretty little flower, what a pretty poppy, pick it and watch it bleed. Not so long, not so pretty any longer, Poppy. Sugar and sent my my signature sent in 7th grade. Yeah, right.
I just texted her. I was like, dude, screw
such a dork. Yeah, so that's that was just so that's the first nightmare, which obviously we get pieces more as they come. Then chapter 8 is when we meet Alistair for the first time officially, which I just want to say that this meeting made me trust him.
Mm-hmm.
I love that for you.
Oh, yeah.
I totally trusted him.
Well, it was a lot of the banter, and I think it was Emil was there too, and she was like joking about like Kieran being like a big oaf trying to block her, and he was like laughing, and they were all like laughing together, and I'm like, oh, this seems nice.
Well, and also
It still gave me ick vibes.
But this is also, isn't this the chapter 2 where he pulls her aside and says, if you need out, like I'll help you get out?
Yeah. Not yet. That comes later.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. Even still, ick vibes.
Okay. But this chapter is the one where Delano is summoned. So he unintentionally is summoned by Poppy. And it says that the door swung open. Delano rushed inside. His eyes drew up short, bright as they checked over me. Are you okay? And then she kind of snaps at him and he makes a funny little joke and then he leaves. So that's that one. Chapter 9 is when Kieran teases Poppy, which happens a lot, but it's just really cute because I love it when they tease. Like, Kieran has a very unique relationship with Poppy, where I think he, at this point in the story, is just so protective over her. Like, he's starting to get to that, it's inching up. Like, he's getting more protective. I feel like by the end of this book, he was full on protective of her, but at this point, he's moving his way into that direction, especially with his relationship with Castile. Chapter 13 is the library with Kieran, and this is...
Wait.
Oh, did I miss
Chapter
something?
9, there's more than just the banter. That was also the like the chamber of the people that died.
Yes.
There's like the podiums with the name or whatever, the pillars with the names and carved in it. Very important because she like accused him of being like the ascendant. And he was like,
yes,
excuse me, look at all these people that died.
Yes.
So it's not just cute.
No,
cute
you're
times.
right. No, you're right. He does. He brings her down and they have this conversation about all these people who have died. And it's I think it was also the first time that I think up until that point, she was kind of on the fence on like who the true bad guy was. But then seeing that kind of solidified to her. That
it was like thousands of names. It was shocking, I think, for her.
Yeah. And then later she obviously goes down and she adds names to the wall. So it's... Yeah, it's a tough time. And then chapter 13 is the library with Kieran, which is basically a massive info dump chapter because we discover old Atlantean books there that have, the history of the families that live there. We discover that there's the Changeling line and that there's Draken and like all these different potential, creatures. And they're really trying to figure out what Poppy is. And at that point, they believe she's, what's the term? It's like an empath is what they think she is.
Empath, yeah.
Yeah. I felt like Alistair was the new father figure, and then he betrayed me. Yeah, it's true.
I'm sorry, guys. I really hate that for you.
I just didn't. I trust him.
I'm sorry, you trusted him.
Chapter 15 and chapter 16 I'm combining them because this was obviously when Lord Cheney shows up and they attack New Haven, and then he threatens that little boy, and Poppy goes with him and leaves her dagger there, which is Castile's indication that because before this had happened, she had told Cass that she wasn't going to run away anymore, that she was going to stay with him because they had similar interest in mind. And I remember when she was taken, she was worried that he would not understand that she was taken unwillingly, but he knew from the dagger that it was an unwilling abduction. Then with Lord Cheney, he takes a sip of Poppy's blood and he says, I can't believe how the Duke and Duchess never, had a bite from you, had a sip. She talks about how painful it is in comparison to the bites that she was given with Castile. And then she stabs him multiple times.
She compares the bite to that of a Craven bite, which also like was at 14, when they start getting more vicious, she like was really seeing the comparisons between them and Craven. Like she could see, like they had like 4 things instead of 2, and like that kind of stuff she was picking up on. So
yeah. So and then while she's stabbing him with isn't it a butter knife? Like isn't it like a kitchen knife?
Yeah, it's like a meat knife, I think. It's the one she took from the table, like right at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, so she's stabbing him with that, which obviously she knows isn't going to kill him, but it's, keeping him away from her.
She stabs him a lot.
Yeah,
it's like a lot.
Yeah, like it's nonstop.
It's like all over.
Yeah. Like there was, it wasn't just like a quick stab and move. No, she was, I think when Cass opened that door, it was like, yeah, exactly.
That's what I imagined, basically.
Yeah. That's kind of what I imagined. Like it was pure chaos. And I think, and I loved even when Cass was like, I was expecting to save the day, but like you were just totally fine.
You got it.
You got it.
Yeah. And then chapter 17 is obviously they bring her back, but then she also sees the blood tree, which was, where her blood was spilled. And it was the first time that I think all of us were like, oh, hold on a second.
Wait a second.
Yeah, so that was with the blood tree. Chapter 18 is when we discovered that Castiel and Kieran have a bond.
Wait.
Did I skip something? Oh, taking the pain away.
And 17, she eases the pain of the injured.
Going,
No, she's right. I put slash taking the pain away and just ignored it. She takes the pain away from a bunch of people, and there's even, it's a woven, right? That denies her.
I don't remember if it was a woman that denies her, but we do see the mother of one of the I think it was a female woven that she helped. The mother called her a second daughter again.
Yes. And that mother was also the one that was like, you don't have to do this to my daughter. Like she's already passing, and Poppy really does still help her, which I think was kind of that indication to her, which was really sweet. Okay. Yeah. Then we get to chapter 18 and we find out about the bond between Cass and Kieran, which is that they are bonded. And at that point we didn't know that, but it makes sense now, obviously. And then chapter 19, is there anything else in chapter 18 I should bring up?
That's when she goes down and writes Mr. Toulis, Mrs. Toulis, and their son's names on the plaques down in the tower.
And then I love it. Someone said it was like 90s psycho thriller type stabby. Yeah. I would agree. That's what 100%. Then chapter 19, I just want to reference again that she had another nightmare. So this is the second time that we've seen this nightmare pop up. 21 is the Dead Bones clan. Is this the beginning of the chapter? I can't remember if it's this chapter or I just want to bring up because I really loved this. It's either chapter 20 or 21 where they're on the road before they get to the Dead Bones clan, and Poppy has this epiphany that because she's going to be his fiance, she needs to act like quiet and demure and like doesn't say anything on the road. And I really loved that in this book because I felt like Cass was like, you can't do, like, you be yourself because no one's going to believe I married this like quiet, I'm going to marry this quiet chick. And it's
it's much more believable when you're hitting him than when you're being quiet. And then there's all these references to like him taking after his dad because apparently Queen Iluana also likes to stab her husband.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up because I remember reading that the first and the second time and being like, I can see, because of her background, she feels like that's the way a wife should be. And Cass is like, nah, my wife is not going to be like that. Like, that's why he loves her. And she doesn't realize that it's actual love at that point, but which is really sweet.
Yep.
And then, and then 21 is obviously the Dead Bones clan, which is creepy as all hell. And then
literally, I remember when I read that, just going, I don't like this Dead Bones thing. Can we not? Yeah. I hate everything about this.
Yeah, it was awful. And then, and it was also like, didn't she talk about the Barats in this chapter too? Like, there was also that conversation about the.
They had the Barats like back in From Blood and Ash was when they interacted with the Barats before the Craven attack. But this chapter was gross because the guy was wearing like a skin mask, and he was like, "What kind of bitch are you?" He was like, "I bet you."
Really hated this guy.
He was saying he made an insult about her scars. He was like, "They like their bitches all cut up," or something like really rude. And she was like, okay, you're dead now. She just,
yeah,
straight up
yeah.
Like, okay.
We're all like blowing up.
him.
Like, absolutely not my guy.
And what was also interesting was while Castile was fighting in this chapter, he wasn't like at the top of his game because he hadn't fed yet. So he was getting weaker and weaker, and obviously Kieran knew that because Kieran transformed into a wolf and did a lot of attacking. And then when he transforms back, it's like the first time Poppy sees him naked, and she's like, "Oh my god!" And then she's like, "Oh my god." Like,
yeah, she's like, his body was a lot like Castile's, lean, hard, ... It's like,
we're like, oh, honey,
a little too close there, bud.
Yeah, where she's like, I'm not looking. Like when she's like actually looking. It was really funny.
Get you some, Poppy. Get you some.
Exactly. Yeah, and then they get to Spessa's End. And then Kieran has a conversation with her about heartmates. And this was really sweet because he explains wait, what would I forget?
That's 23. It's heartmates.
Yeah.
22. Are you going to talk about him going psycho in 22?
Oh, I didn't, but yeah, we should.
That's Hungry Cass. He woke up and he was like crazy. He was like an animal. Like his eyes were totally black.
I forgot about that. Yeah, and he doesn't bite her in that moment though.
No, it was a mixture. Like she like woke him up suddenly, I guess, and he was like holding her by the throat, and then he like wanted that honeydew. He was hungry in two ways, but she like sensed his hunger, and it was like awful. And then he was like snarling at Kieran like he was gonna offend him, but yeah, it was because Kieran. And then after that we got her.
Yeah, I forgot that was the reason.
He heard the scream. And he was like, I was gonna protect her, and he was like, oh, it's something different. And then Cass looks up, and his eyes are like at Kieran, are all black and snarling. He's like, Poppy, you need to run the second he comes after me. And that's when she uses her gift to like calm him down.
Yeah,
but
God, that was such a good chapter. Bad. I can't believe I almost.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. I'm like, I may have to reread that again.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to reread that like right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, but then
when we're done with this, I know exactly what I'm doing.
Chapter 22.
Chapter 22. Oh, yeah. Kingdom Flesh and Fire.
I've got notes.
Yeah, perfect. Remind me in Marco Polo.
I got you.
Then we get the heartmates information, which at this point it sounds a lot like they're soulmates, but there are heartmate trials that typically they go up against, and the gods are usually there to kind of, be there for this conversation. And Castile and Kieran both think that Poppy is Cass's heartmate.
I don't know if Castile thinks that. I don't think that was ever stated, because she brings it up to him later, and he's like, "Oh, do you really think that?" Like they're like not sure when they talk about it later, closer to the wedding. But I think this is. Yeah.
But Cass has a suspicion that they're heartmates.
I don't know.
Or is it just Kieran?
I think
it's just Kieran.
So at
I think
point,
it's that omnipresent thing where like Kieran can see your relationship better than you can see it when you're in the middle of it. So I think Kieran thinks that they are, but Cass is still like, Cass doesn't believe that Poppy could ever really love him.
Right.
Like, and so
yeah. Because at this point too, because this goes back to the reason Kieran is having this conversation with Poppy about the heartmates is because he thinks the reason Cass isn't feeding is because they're heartmates and he will only feed from Poppy. And Kieran's like, listen, this is an awkward conversation, but you need to let him feed from you because otherwise he's going to starve. Like,
yeah,
that's basically it. So,
well, I think it wasn't just that. I think he was just frustrated because he could see that they were like, it's from the outside. We're like, they're in love. Just be in love. Stop pretending. And I think he's like frustrated that like his friend has gone through so much and they're not just like just love each other.
I have literally never related to a character more in a book because I was with Kieran there. I was like, can you just love each other? Like, it's so good.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone's correcting me. So Cass didn't know because
she agrees now. She agrees.
Well, for some reason I was like, did they? I couldn't remember. I thought for sure he like insinuated it, but I think that makes more sense because because he literally says, "I did never think you could love me." Right.
Much later.
And then they talk about the joining. Yes. So then chapter 24 and 25 is the joining conversation. So this is
From Alistair, specifically.
From Alistair, yeah.
The worst human being on the planet.
Well, I'm pretty sure Kieran brings up the word, but doesn't explain it to her, right? Because why does she ask him about the joining?
So it was more of like
Someone
I think
brought
he was
it
just
up.
going to have a chat. So Alistair had seen Cass that morning. And so he brought up the fact, like, just, you know, he's going to need to feed from you. And then I think that just led into like, there's going to be like, the conversation was like one of those conversations that like an older person has with a younger person, is like, you don't actually know what's going on and you need your hand held and you're making wrong decisions. It came across very much that way. He's like, also like, you're going to age. Like, this isn't it. And so he mentioned it in passing, just like said the joint. She's like, what is that? And he's like, we really shouldn't talk about this. This is kind of awkward. Right. And so she's like, oh no, I want to know now. Cause like, you're going to regret asking me this.
Yeah. Because I know, and I feel like it was mentioned at least one other time casually, like in the background, like I feel like it was. And so maybe I'm wrong on that though.
So that probably, I don't know if this is specifically that moment, but back in chapter 1 with the heart removal, the guy that was arguing was like, are we supposed to believe that she's going to bond with you? And I think that might have been what
the joining. Okay.
Because it wasn't even the joining. It was just like, we're supposed, like, she won't even accept your proposal, and we're supposed to believe she will bond with you. And it was like, bond? Right. What does that mean?
Yeah. So Alistair is the one that has this incredibly awkward conversation about the joining with Poppy. Basically, and the way kind of you said it perfectly in terms of like, he has this conversation and it does feel like an older member of like the culture is explaining to like someone very young of like what it is. But he doesn't imply that she has to do it, but basically says it's going to be expected and like you should know what this is and all of that. And then she later asks Cass about the joining, and Cass kind of laughs because he finds the whole thing hysterical that Alistair is the one that explains it to her. And then he explains it in a less frightening way, but it's still basically the same thing that Alistair says, which for anyone who doesn't remember, the whole purpose of the joining is that you are bonded to basically everyone who's a part of the joining is bonded to the same lifespan, so everyone lives the same amount of time. So if at this time,
and it's typically the longest person.
So it's a little more complicated.
Yeah, so
it's more complicated than that.
No.
Please so explain.
Like in this case, if it was like her and Cass and Kieran, because Kieran is bonded to Cass, specifically it links the mortal blood person to the Wolven. So in some cases, like we find out, like King Malik has a very long lifespan. He actually outlived his Wolven. So the bond actually connects the mortal person to the Wolven's lifespan, and they're connected so much that if one dies, the other dies as well. It's not like casual.
So it's the idea here is that whoever first starts the initiation of the joining is the one we are bonded to. So most of the time it is we are bonded to the Wolven. So the Wolven is the one that initiates it. But because if it was
Wolven have the longest lifespans, correct?
Right. But if
between it was immortal and Atlantean and Wolven.
But if
Atlanteans are longer than Wolven.
Yeah. So it's complicated, and there's some like, but basically the idea here is that everyone is tied to a similar lifespan. But so that everyone is living, because the idea here is the reason it's brought up in this particular instance, it is because Poppy is mortal. So, and you know, Cass is an Atlantean, Kieran is a Wolven. It has to be bonded to a Wolven. A Wolven has to participate in this specific joining, and because Poppy is the mortal, they would want to tie it to the two of theirs lifespans. So,
yes. It's kind of weird too, because there was also part of it was about Shay when she was talking to Alistair, and he said she would have done it. And I'm like, so it's not just about extending lifespans, it's also about creating a bond that shows a stronger relationship bond by having that. And he also said it's not necessarily between 3 people. If both partners are already bonded, it could actually be between 4. So like, we got lots going on, and it doesn't have to be sexual, but like, we all want it to be.
Yes. And it is also insinuated too that like when, you know, let's just say if, didn't Alistair break the bond? Yes. So the reason Alistair didn't die is because the bond was broken. So he severed the bond, which you can technically do, but they don't really go into the details of what he did.
It's different. So that's like Cass's bond with Kieran is different than like the joining bond.
Yes.
So the joining bond specifically, where it's like extending life, that's where you've got like
another
we're tying
person.
the lifespans together.
Yeah.
Versus like the bond between like the Wolven and the elemental line is a different dynamic.
Yes.
This entire
which we learn more about that dynamic later.
Yeah. So basically,
my sick brain is just like not processing.
Basically, I feel like a lot of us read about the joining and we're like, oh, that's obviously going to happen because everyone's lifespans are so different. And so at this point, we just need to get one person on the same like pattern of everyone else. But it is also implied that the joining could happen multiple times, kind of like to Kate's point. So like, let's just say it is, let's put Delano in the mix. Let's say it's Delano, Cass, and Poppy. Okay, let's pretend like it's not Kieran. Okay.
We're living the dream here, guys.
Yeah,
we're living the dream.
We are gonna send somebody into like a spiraling pit of despair.
I'm just not saying Kieran because I know everyone assumes it's Kieran. I think we all do. But I'm just for shits and giggles. Let's say it's Delano instead. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So they all decide to do the joining to tie Poppy's mortal life to them. But let's just say Delano ends up finding a lover that is not. Sure. Then they have to do the joining again to tie that person to all of them.
No. Yes. But I don't think they would, though. I don't think they would. I think they only do it between, like, no. Where is your contextual evidence? I have not seen a cumulative joining.
I'm just saying that
is like an orgy party. Where's your contextual evidence? I have not seen this.
Just trust me.
Hey, check the Instagram chat.
Just trust me. Okay. But I think that's the idea here is that like you can tie multiple people so it can turn into a full orgy fest. But for most cases, it's usually just one person and the Wolven or one person and the Atlantean. Yeah. Basically, the whole joining thing is very confusing. All we all know about it is we're getting lots of action in it. And she can say it's not required, and she's repeatedly said that in every book, and I don't care. I don't care. You don't make something called the joining and then say, well, it doesn't have to be sexual, and then be like, no.
That's fair. I think also, like, we see two different things happen in terms of extending lifespans, right? Like, we see specifically, they talk about the Heartmate trials, and we see the joining.
Yes.
And I think when we look at the two different series, and you think about how much things are mentioned, the joining will happen From Blood and Ash.
Yes.
And we may get to see the Heartmate trials in the Flesh and Fire series.
Yes.
If you look at how much they show up in the series, how much they talk about, because she doesn't just mention something for no reason.
Yes.
Like, if she's adding that detail, she's mentioning it for a reason. And she wouldn't have gone into this multiple times just to be like, psych.
Right.
They'll be like, we're done. We want to see it. We're done. We're not. We'd be like, all right, who's writing the fanfic? And we're out, you know?
Exactly. No, it's true. Because, I agree with you. Like, the thing with the Heartmate trials, I was always very confused about it because it was very briefly mentioned. And then all of the sudden, everyone's like, I need receipts. Listen. It's a gut instinct.
Sorry, guys.
It's a gut instinct, but I will pull the receipts because I'm pretty sure it's mentioned in The Crown of Gilded Bones and I will find it. I think it's mentioned.
You know, if
what?
Somebody's going to find it, it's Sarah.
I think it's mentioned. I'll find it. It'll be fine.
About tying the life? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
No. I think specifically, I was referring specifically to chapter 24. Alistair says, if the Wolven dies, so does the one with mortal blood. Mm-hmm. So I'm specifically staying within the books we're talking about, people.
Yeah, where it's like, I'm over here being like, so the Crown of Gilded Bones.
Calm down, guys. Calm down, guys. Yes, it makes sense that it's tied to the one with the longest lifespan. I think also, actually, what I was saying to defend myself was also a little incorrect because Alistair made the comment that Malik kept outliving his Wolven, but Malik isn't an Atlantean like we thought at the beginning of the Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. By the end of Fire, we think he's a deity. So that would make sense that he would be outliving his wolven.
But that's a different bond than the joining. So like that, I guess then is my question is if it's not a joining bond with his wolven, then if they're not.
Yeah, that was more just saying like. My issue was that I was saying that wolven didn't live as long as Atlanteans, but I was using Malik as an example. Malik is not an Atlantean.
Which is which we again.
So yes, Atlanteans and wolven live about the same.
This is also a really
to our knowledge.
This is also a really good point to bring out. When these books were coming out, and we didn't have the Chronicle of Bones or A Shadow in the Ember, or I mean, none of us know what. These moments were things I'd be like, I have questions. Yeah, because they just keep coming up. Okay. So we learned about the joining. Then we have the great, incredible potential joining we all thought we were getting, but wasn't. The feeding Castile with Kieran in the room. And
the best was when like he was feeding and she got pushed against the wall, and she specifically says like the beginning she was like nervous about Kieran being there, and then once they really get into it and she's like pushed against the wall and she's like into it, she like forgets he's there and it's all just like bodies, and I'm just like, get it, get into it.
This is one of those things where I'm like, listen friends, I know that like some people think that Kieran and Poppy have like a brother-sister relationship. There's too many indications that that's not what's going on.
No.
She's definitely attracted to him.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't be? Right. That's kind of my thing. It's like, yes, it's uncomfortable because of like, I mean, I would be uncomfortable in that situation. But once she knows that she's safe with Kieran, which is, I think, the big thing, it's like, oh, hold on.
I could be into this.
Yeah, like I could be into this. Like,
well, and when they were talking about the joining too, I think it was really interesting because like when she had her second conversation, she was talking to Castile about it. He was like, "Oh, like do you know about that from the book?" And she was like, "Oh yeah." And he was like, I mean, he said like to each their own, and she was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Wait, so you're interested?" And he was teasing her, but it was kind of like one of those things. Like I could see myself like someone saying that, and I would be like blushing.
Yes,
but then you've got this like little like curious like voice in your head, like, wait.
Am I?
Okay.
Yeah.
Izzy. Like, am I into this? It's like when we're it's like, am I into this?
Izzy is up in these comments saying like a Jamie Cersei sort of brother-sister relationship. And I cannot with you right now.
Gross. Absolutely not.
Absolutely
not. Take that hatred somewhere else. Let me tell you. Yeah, no. It's more like she, like, unlike Castile, where with Castile, I feel like she's always been attracted to him. Like, she's always found him really attractive. Yeah. And then they really built this, like, their friendship was building around the same time that their, like, relationship was building. Her relationship with Kieran has just been about the friendship. And, like, that has led to some attraction. But for the most part, it has just been their friendship. But there is attraction between the two of them, for sure.
Yeah, she wouldn't have been able to stand for him to be in the room when all of the things happen.
Yeah, all I'm saying is at this point, rereading this book, I'm like, listen, if the joining doesn't happen, I'm gonna feel so disappointed. It's not.
Well, and I think one of the things is too, it's like Poppy has such a different background. Like, like we learn more about like the Wolven, like even. I'm trying to think, like, even after like they did that feeding and she was kind of like worried to see Kieran again. He was like, what? Like, it's so natural. This is something he has to do to survive. It's like, it's not a big deal. Like, this is just like, feel your needs, do what you got to do. And there's no like judgment. It's so like free flowing.
Yes.
Which is really nice. So it's very, very contrasting to like what she was raised in.
Yeah. Okay. So we have the feeding, which is a great chapter 26 for anyone who wants to go back and read it because it winner. Then chapter 28 is healing Beckett. This is the first time she's healed someone, which was a big deal because up until this point it was just taking away pain, and she glows for the first time as well, which is a big deal, and I think everyone is just very surprised, and they really think that she is an empath at this point. But some people are still not totally convinced. I think at that point we do meet Vonetta, and Vonetta isn't even convinced, but she thinks her father may know what she is.
They say some of the stuff aligns, but they've never seen an empath glow before.
Yes.
And so that's like a big deal that she glows like moonlight.
Yes.
Is a big deal.
Yeah. And then chapter 38 is when the Ascended officially arrive in Spess's End. And then right before this, isn't this also when Jasper arrives? He's there before the Ascended, right? Or does he arrive after?
We're just gonna not mention that they like get married.
Isn't that after? Oh, I literally skipped it. Oh my god, I didn't mean to. Chapter 37. I didn't mean to. I was
like, wait. Before we do chapter 37, I just have to throw in here because it's tattooed on my body.
Oh.
That in chapter 36, we don't borrow tomorrow's problems today.
Yes, and that's in the cave, right?
I don't remember where it is, but I remember like the whole thing.
And yes, the empaths were evil. That is true. Love a glowing redhead. Wink.
Yeah, because chapter 36 is where they like decide that everything is real.
Yes.
And like we're gonna really do this.
Yes. And that's when Jasper must arrive, because he arrives around the time that they make that decision.
Right. And then they get married.
Chapter 31 is when he arrives. That's the chapter that like they had just gone to the spring. And then they're at dinner and Jasper comes in, and that's when like Alistair, this is where I'm starting to be like, Alistair is shady, because he's like, but you were expected to marry someone else. And that's like the first time they meet Jasper is like at that dinner interaction.
Okay.
When that's revealed.
Okay. And then, and then we have the wedding, and she wears one of Vonetta's dresses. Yes. And it's this beautiful ceremony, and they put their rings on the soil, and lightning happens, which is a sign that Nyktos is blessing the wedding.
Not lightning, but it goes dark. There's no lightning.
I thought there was lightning.
No, the sky goes totally dark. It's like noon, and it goes to night.
Why did I think there was lightning?
Because dark clouds roll in to make it dark.
That's probably why. I wasn't paying
But there's
attention.
no lightning.
But the sky changes.
Yes.
And it's isn't it?
Yeah, the actual ceremony's in 37. Yeah. And it says, where'd it go?
And isn't it also like it's longer than when Cass's parents married? Like this is more of a sign.
Yeah.
The only last time they saw it was when Cass's parents married, but it was not nearly as like intense. Yes. And it's a good omen from Nyktos, God, King of the Gods, that he approves of the union.
Yes. And they get their marriage imprints.
Yeah, and it goes to their pointer, rings go on their pointer finger.
Yep.
Because it's closest to the line to your heart.
Yes.
And then I think it was your left hand. So there's like a shape from the knife cutting on their hand. It's just like a gold imprint. Yes.
So they have...
And it's there until death or decree ends the marriage.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. But at this point, they're in love. Like they're married for the right reasons. Like, which is really sweet.
Yes. Yes.
And this is like, they're no longer pretending, and they're like totally into each other, and it's great. Everything's all happy endings. And then they get interrupted, and because the Ascended have arrived. And so they go to the Rise to see the Ascended, and that's when the heads come out, and we see, that it's Elijah. And was there another head?
Magda.
That's who it is.
Magda, yeah.
Which is so sad. And so... then they have a second to like regroup because they're not all there yet. They're waiting essentially. And they want to take Poppy, obviously. Cass's immediate reaction is for Poppy to then go with Kieran through the Skotos Mountains to Atlantia. She disagrees, but they do decide to take Alistair out. So he goes, and then Kieran goes, and he's supposed to warn the armies to come. And hopefully everyone will come in time, that type of situation. And then they start the fight. And they're still waiting at that point. They come in during the fight. And all these wolves come in, which is like this big, thing. And they all start howling and all this crazy nonsense. And then, also the guards. We haven't brought up the guards, the women guards, the Atlantean guards.
Yeah.
Because that was a big deal as well. Like I think they were a little cautious of Poppy. And then when they saw that she could like use a bow and arrow and was like really good with a sword and like her dagger and everything, they like really respected her and were like glad that she was like there to help.
Yeah. Well, and Poppy started up on the Rise. She was supposed to be only like using bow and arrow. Yes. And then she was like, no, I'm going to go fight with my people. And then she gets down, and like her and Cass are like hiding under one of the catapults.
Yes.
And like she thinks they're going to die, but she realizes that they've been told like not to hurt her. So she threatens her own life. She like puts a blade to her throat. Yes. She's like, if you don't stop, I'm going to kill myself. And that's when like all the Wolven come in, and then like behind the Wolven, you've got like the rest of the Atlantean army that they've sent on horseback, and
and then
it's very exciting.
It was a big deal, and it was also like people were a little confused as to why all the Wolven kind of showed up, type of a situation, because they had a very intense. This is like our first indication of like how much control she has over these Wolven at that point, and this is when they go up to the carriage and they kill the Duchess. She makes some fun accusations about her grandmother and all these things, which then makes us wonder if Poppy is related to the Queen. And then they have freaky time in the carriage.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which to this day is still one of the weirdest moments in the series, but I also cannot blame Castile. He wanted that honeydew in the middle of a fighting moment.
And he admits that like he realized that she really would have killed herself.
Yeah.
Stop everything.
Yeah.
And like he's got to have it now because she almost died.
Yeah. Who is Eloana? Eloana is Cass's mother.
Yes, Queen Eloana.
Eloana
of Atlantia.
I say Eloana, so you like it's ELO versus Ileana.
Oh
is soulless.
Eloana and Ileana.
It's Eloana and
I know
Ileana.
I'm wrong.
You know, I can't
Eloana and Ileana.
I can't pronounce.
I know, that's why we were just talking about Malik and Malik, because I always just say king and prince, but then we looked up the pronunciation. It's Malik for the king.
Yeah.
And that makes it easier, but I have to very consciously think about it. It's hard.
Same. Yeah. And then, okay. So the Ascended arrive, the Wolven hear the call in chapter 41. Chapter 43, we're skipping a little bit just because this is a big one. This is when she and everyone is now going to Atlantia. They're making the trek through the Skotos Mountains. We see the mist and how it's kind of moving because this was a big concern of theirs. And she sleeps in between Kieran and Castile, which was really cute because they all rolled over to Castile, which I really loved that. I thought it was
like awesome. A magnet. They were like, she was like, I don't know whose leg this is, but they're just like,
yeah. And it was like really sweet.
It's a poppy sandwich.
It's a poppy sandwich. Yeah.
What was a Cass sandwich? Cass was in the middle.
Oh, sorry. Is it Castile sandwich?
Oh, yeah. Wait, I thought she was in the middle.
No, Cass was in the middle and she was like on the one side and Kieran was on the other. So when she like came around and her leg was like over him and her arm was over him and then Kieran's leg was like over him. So she didn't know whose leg was whose. And then when she like woke up in the middle of the night, he like pulled them closer and it's just like.
So what I'm hearing you tell me is that Castile was the little spoon. And that is just.
Yeah.
Castile was the middle spoon.
A casserole, if you will.
A casserole.
Oh God.
It really was a casserole. Yeah.
I can't laugh. You can't make me laugh.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, so obviously she wakes up and she hears this voice and it's telling her to go to this edge of the mountains, and then someone stops her, and but she's also having a nightmare. Well, I was like, I'm gonna say who it is, but I was like, at that point she thinks it's just someone. She doesn't know who it is, and then we later find out that it is Ios, who is one of the goddesses.
Well, Ios stops her, but the voice that calls her name is her dad. It's like her dad calling her name.
Yes.
In the nightmare, yes, but Ios stops her.
Yes, and so it is Ios, and
we love Ios.
We love her. This is a good time to bring up, if you have not read A Shadow in the Ember, like one of the joys is meeting Ios and like getting to know her a little bit, because it was that book is so good. So then which they're all like, oh my gosh, a god woke like to save you, like that's another sign, like oh my gosh, this is kind of a big deal. And then they arrive. And Cass is separated from her because he's going to go talk to his parents. She's taken down to the Temple of Nyktos. Am I forgetting anything before this? I know Beckett takes her. Well, Beckett takes her.
Yes. Did we want to say what Eos told her?
Oh, yeah. I don't have that written down.
She said, go home, take what is yours, and you will find what you seek there, the truth. Go home. And then at the end of that chapter, when they arrive at the gates of Atlantia, Cass says, welcome home, princess.
Yeah, he's so sweet. So then Beckett's there, and Beckett takes her down to the Temple of Nyktos, and they start to stone her.
Yeah,
because they think she is an empath, and they think she's so they have this fear of her. And on top of the fact that, and quite a few of them bring up the fact that she was raised by Solus, and so they're a little untrustworthy. So they begin to stone her, and then it starts to rain blood, and then a blood tree appears, and then all the Wolven are summoned, and Cass walks in, and Cass's mom does the whole thing about taking the crown off, and we find out that she is the descendant of Nyktos, which wild.
Question.
Yeah.
Do leaves change color at the end of this book, or is that later?
Later.
Not in this book. Not in this book.
The leaves in the Skotos Mountains.
It's that cliffhanger that picks right back up, so I wasn't sure if it was like at the tail end or at the beginning of.
Well, that's a good thing to bring up, that the trees on the Skotos Mountain, they're gold, right?
They're gold, yeah.
For the Atlantic.
And one of the things, actually talking about the trees, I was saying about her questions earlier about how she's actually really smart. When they were in the Skotos Mountains, she said, because we learned that Eos is buried underneath the mountain, and that the trees formed after she was buried from on the mountain into the foothills. And so she said, is there a god buried in the blood forest? Because it reminds me of the blood forest. She asks that question, and that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
That's all we're going to say about that.
Yeah, which is obviously...
Well, because we don't get an answer.
We don't.
Cass is like, not that I know of, but she asked that question.
And so that pretty much wraps up those 2 books, which we did pretty good. Under 2 hours. I told you we could do it.
We did it!
Okay, I'm going to go through some of the questions. I just put the link into for anyone who has questions or anything we want to discuss. But I'm going to go back to the question about... what was a favorite moment in this book that you have now that you have information that you might not have been a favorite moment unless you had this piece of information? I'm like, for me, it's probably the kissing scene with Kieran. I think that is like I really love that little first interaction. And then also the library, because we get all this really cool information that we know later becomes available.
I think for me, so obviously I have my favorite moment, but that's just like my favorite moment from the book, not because I know other things. I think now, knowing what I know after reading A Shadow in the Ember, Eos waking up to stop her is probably one of my favorite moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think something that's interesting is like just the whole like ending scene with her like new power, but also the stuff with Beckett, because we learn about like what's going on. And I feel like that whole ending scene, I mean, that's one of the things I love about JLA is like she ends the book and she picks it up 0.01 seconds later. And it that like bleeds into the first 10% of Gilded Bones. And it's just like the whole time you like can't breathe.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And for anyone who's read the first 5 chapters of The War of Two Queens.
I haven't.
Okay.
Wait, is that a spoiler?
No. I was just going to say it's the first one that I didn't feel like it had that immediate, like there was time has passed since that book. So like, yeah. So I think it's almost
stress.
I think it's almost a month has passed, if I remember. Jesus.
Oh my gosh. That's like as long as the whole book.
I know.
But she's like probably like, I don't know.
Yeah. So we do find out that time has passed when we start The War of Two Queens, which isn't, again, I'm not going to go into super spoilers.
I read the first chapter because it got sent to me with A Shadow in the Ember.
Yeah.
That's the only chapter
I did the first one also.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I also love the wedding. I love the wedding, and I also love the cavern.
Yes.
Well, I mean, if we're talking just like favorite moments, the whole deciding everything is real, don't borrow tomorrow's problems today, obviously is like, top tier for me. It's literally tattooed on my body, guys.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going anywhere.
Yeah. No, it's true. Okay, someone said, did you notice on page 606 or 622 of In a Sight, the Draken have red eyes, but in page 462 of the Crown of Guild of Blows, they have blue eyes. And it is something that's very, so some of the Draken have red eyes and some of them have blue.
Yeah.
And
what in A Shadow in the Ember?
622.
I think isn't there distinguishing things that they have like,
yes,
they have like vertical eyes, like what you would imagine like what like a reptile would have, but I don't think they have a distinguished color.
No.
So I don't think they've changed.
No, I think some of them.
A Shadow in the Ember ends on page 550. So somebody help me out.
We'll look it up. We'll look it up.
What was the question?
We'll look it up.
It was 3 something.
Yeah. We will.
Okay.
We will look it up in our books because we haven't done the Crown of Gildbones / A Shadow in the Ember notes.
I take note of all eye colors.
Yeah, so
we'll figure it out.
We will figure it out.
Very serious.
Yeah, so don't worry, we'll know. Okay, someone says, are you guys pro joining or anti joining? I feel like it is very diverse in this fandom.
Well, in us, I don't think it's diverse. I think we all are very pro joining. I mean, we are literally talking about flavors of sticks today, so I think we are all pro joining.
Yeah, we're all pro joining. I without getting into spoilers, at this point in the story, I was not pro joining. I was not because I didn't want it to happen, but because I didn't understand like why. Like I was just kind of like whatever. But by the time I had ended the Crown of Gilded Bones, I was pro joining all the way because it made sense to me why it would happen. So I think it
makes sense. But I think so my caveat with it is that like I am all for the joining, but if I had the choice between no joining and having them maintain good relationships versus having the joining and for things getting weird, I would rather them not have it.
Yeah, true.
But I think where they are by the end of Gilded Bones, I'm like, they have such a good dynamic.
Yeah.
I don't see it taking them further apart. I see it doing what it's supposed to and like bringing them closer together. And therefore I do want the joining. And I also want the spice and I also want the fan art.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like this fan art is not doing it for me. I'm gonna need something a little spicier.
Yeah.
The one where they're doing the feeding cast scene is it, and they've got like the blood and it's great.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Yeah, for sure.
One of my favorite stickers that I have is this one. It's not joining, but it is Poppy and Cass.
Yeah,
that kind of vibe, but like add another person and you're good.
Yeah. I know, and you're perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you guys feel about Eloana? This is Castiel's mother.
At the end of this book?
At the end of this book, I feel like we're not supposed to have spoilers, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk a little bit more about like our thoughts on that in our next one.
At the end of this book, I don't think I knew her well enough to determine whether or not I liked her.
But I think we all have opinions.
But I have thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have thoughts and I have opinions on what I think is going to happen. But at the end of this book, literally the only time we saw her was at the end when she took the crown off and said, oh, like the last descendant of the gods is here. And it's like, oh shit. Okay. Yeah. But I have no opinion on her by the end of Flesh and Fire.
So we will definitely discuss it more. Because,
for sure. Make sure to come back next week and bring that question up again.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Okay. Do we know what happened in the tavern when Poppy's parents died? Like, do we have full details on that yet? No. And that is something that we get more details in the Crown of Gilded Bones. And I'm sure we will get more details because some of the spoiler quotes that she's released.
We still don't have all of the answers by the end of the Crown of Gilded Bones. So there's still more answers to come. We still have questions.
And some of the quotes she's been releasing of the War of Two Queens indicate to us that we will get more answers about that night.
Every time she shows it, she shows like a little more. She shows like a little tidbit more. She'll like change a fact.
Yes.
Change a fact. So I would just like anytime it comes up, like take note of like any things that change.
Yeah.
Smells.
Anything
smells different.
Do we know which god Poppy's related to? Yes. Which god is she related to?
Well, we can't
by the end of this book. Yes, we know what Eloana says at the end is that she is the last descendant of the king of the gods, which is Nyktos.
Yep.
She says that at the very end, the last line.
So she
Nyktos.
She is
Nyktos.
She doesn't say Nyktos, but we know.
My baby Nyktos. Another reason you should read this book is Nyktos.
Yeah. I finally got my mother to get to chapter 20 in that book, and now she's like flying through it. And I was like, I told you.
It took her 3 freaking months to get to chapter 20.
I know.
And she disagreed with you. And I was like, ma'am, I've been talking to your daughter for probably about 2 months, and you were starting it when I started talking to her. So.
It's either that or she's finding Sky and Breath so boring right now. And I'm like,
how? Like, how? Literally, how?
My mom, literally, I'm going to out her right now. So, sorry, Mom, I'm outing you. She told me she doesn't want to read it. She just wants me to tell her what happens because she's so bored.
No, I had a hard time with the first one.
I'm
the
like,
second one was so good. It had me hooked from the beginning.
She's crazy. I don't know a single person who hasn't. No, she's had a good chunk in the second one, and she's like, I'm just so bored, and I'm like,
I devoured. I devoured Sky and Breath.
So good.
I understand. Okay, well, this is basically it for this session. So I thank you all for hanging out with us while we chatted and discussed From Blood and Ash and the I almost said the War of Two Queens, but From Blood and Ash and A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. Next
week I won't cough up a lung.
Yeah, next week we're gonna talk The Crown of Gildbones and A Shadow in the Ember. So yes, we are requiring you to read A Shadow in the Ember because from everyone who has finished the arc, they highly recommend it. At that point, I will be done with the War of Two Queens, so I will probably be sprinkling some.
Because somebody has the arc.
Is downstairs. Along with the baby Kieran that's like this.
I love you and I hate you.
He's not, but that's not the right color. I saw the PR box pictures and he's gray. He's not supposed to be gray.
I know.
He's supposed to be tawny colored.
I know.
Not
what's
medium gray.
I don't know what's going on in this picture.
He's supposed to be like tan.
The wolf in front of him is also white.
I think that's Delano.
That's probably Delano.
Please tell me that that's what's happening.
Yeah,
Delano. It's Snow White.
I love that you call him Delano and I call him Delano.
No, he's Delano.
Why is he Delano?
Yeah, no, it's so yeah, I'll probably throw in some sneaky things. And then for anyone who's wondering, tomorrow we are talking Sky and Breath. Hosab. Are you coming to that? Kate, are you coming to that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, you can.
If I'm invited,
Yeah,
if I'm invited, I'm coming.
Yeah, you totally can come. I don't mind.
She knows I'm going.
Yeah, let me tell you, you can take the seat of any of the women who have not finished it, because there's like 4 of them. And I'm like, I'm over. Yeah, I know.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, you can come.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh my God. Yeah, I read it in like 3 days. I am in love with Rune, so that's all.
Rune in the crew!
Rune in the crew. Rune in the crew. I know. I was so not nice in our Marco Polo chat earlier. One of the girls was like, yeah, no, I wasn't. I had warned everyone that if people were going to start simping over Rune now, I was not going to be nice because I have loved him since book 1. Like I have just.
I loved him in book 1 also, but like.
So what happened was somebody said that they added Rune to their book boyfriend list because of this book. And I came in after Sarah got a little sassy and was just like, okay, but he should have always been on your book boyfriend list. Like he could have been low on your book boyfriend list and like increased, but he should have been on your list.
He was.
I think book 1, it was like Hunt and Rune were like the same for me. And then after book 2, Rune
I'm trying to remember where he was.
Rune might be my top book boyfriend though.
Honestly,
like above Nikto.
Look. I just opened up to this.
Oh no, close that. Turn that off. Because I will get copywritten. But
I did. I turned it off really fast.
No, Rune is like, he's the best. And like, he was high on my book boyfriend list. Hunt beat him only because of the feralness of Hunt in Sky and Breath, but everything else is just because of Rune. So
Rune is. Well, we all know how much I love Rune and
the crew. Okay.
And
well,
the crew.
We're going to talk for Sky and Breath for like probably 5 minutes, but I thank everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. And we will be back tomorrow at 8:00 to talk Sky and Breath. And then we'll be back next week to talk Crown of Gildbones and A Shadow in the Ember. So, bye friends. Yeah. I'm going to do the end screen and make sure it's showing. Hold on.
We're still delayed.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, yeah.